if you have high TMAO levels and you've got cardiovascular issues and you go in and we look at your gut and we fix up the microbiome, that's going to reduce those TMAO levels, therefore reduce that risk of cardiovascular issues. So it all comes back to what you're feeding your bugs, basically.
So you could have superb bugs and eat meat 3 times a day and be fine.
Yeah.
Or you could be pretty much vegetarian-ish and to have TMAO levels through the roof.
Hey guys, welcome to the ATP Project. You're with your host Steve and me, Nick. Hey Steve-o.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing today?
Terrific. I got new glasses.
Do you?
These are actually professional ones and prescriptions. So
They're actually ones that you got made up for you.
I know.
Wow.
It's amazing
So
because
you can actually read now.
I can read
see.
these tiny little graphs that we're going to talk about today and all this weird stuff.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about, it's a really difficult one to get a title for.
Well, it is. We did struggle. Matt's going to have to come up with a fancy title for it, which will be there when this comes out. But yeah, so we're actually going to be talking about particular foods that have either been given a bad rap, when really they shouldn't have a bad rap, or maybe a good rap when perhaps they shouldn't have had such a good rap.
Oh, no, I came up with a good one. Is something like we demonise foods. Are they the work of the devil, or are they blamed by the devil? Or some other. I can't remember the clever title I came up with.
It was very clever.
But it was, just trust me, it was sensational.
It was amazing.
But it's like foods like, that you might have heard of that you'll see on social media, where people will say it's great, best thing for you, and you'll see other people saying it's the worst food. An example of that, we're going to talk about red meat today, we're going to talk about milk, we're going to talk about eggs, we're going to talk about salt, we're going to talk about those sorts of foods, saturated fats, we're going to talk about them that you'll hear some people, and I could show you, on my phone, I've got loads of, this is great, this is bad, et cetera, et cetera. So we're going to look at the data, we're going to look at the science behind them, and I've picked, of the papers I've got, I've picked mortality as an end goal. Because some people will say, eating cholesterol is bad because it increases cholesterol, which increases heart disease. Okay, heart disease is one of the diseases you can die of, but there's millions of others. Yeah. So I've tried to broaden it out and said, look at the big picture, mortality, whether you're going to die or not if you eat a lot of this stuff.
That's really the ultimate thing we should worry about, isn't it?
Well, I think, and we'll get criticised saying, I don't want to have that because X, Y, Z. So
yeah, and we should stress we're not particularly for or against heavily any of these foods. No. We're just putting out the science behind it. I know, and a lot of times with particularly red meat, say we'll start with that. There's so much stigma and don't eat red meat. It causes cancer. It causes heart disease. But why? Yeah. Why does it?
Why does it? How does it? And also then you'll have people, and I've brought him up before, but there's guys that just eat red meat and they seem to be doing fine and they swear they're doing well. Yeah. And as a scientist, you can't just ignore evidence, even though it's a case study, one person. So maybe it comes back to the one man's foods, one man's poison. Yeah. It's a bit like the Hippocrates thing, but we have to investigate it. There's data on this now, and is it bad? Is it good? And it may be both right. It might be bad for some, good for others.
And I think there is a little bit of that, and we will talk a little bit about that, about why it is bad for some people but not bad for others, and what is the mechanism there? What's the driver? Yeah. So why is it, as you said, one man's poison, and why? Yes. So, we're going to dive into that a little bit, which I think is very interesting. So it's not us sitting here saying, red meat's great and there is no other thing for it. There is times when there's nothing wrong with it. For health reasons, obviously we're not talking about ethics here. No. And other times for some people it can be detrimental to their health.
Absolutely it can be. So we're going to start with red meat and we've got sort of biochemistry on it, and we've got overall consumption of it. And I think, there was papers releasing, and I didn't bring them in here, that it's associated with diseases like type 2 diabetes. Yes. Now, association doesn't mean causation. We have to get some scientific principles because otherwise, there'd be an association between my lifespan of 55 years and the reduction of dental caries. In the last 55 years has been dramatic. Yes. Not because of me.
No.
But I'm associated with it.
That's right.
Because I was born and then since 1969, dental caries have gone down.
Yeah, I mean, it could have been from you, Steve.
Could have. It was from me.
You have that much pull in the world.
It's like, turning water into wine,
That's right.
zap, all that sort of fun stuff. Well, there we go. There's a few emails coming in already. I can feel them. But no, it wasn't me that did the two thing. But I'm associated with it.
Yes.
And there was a fantastic association with one of the actors with some other disease that went up and down. The more roles he started in, something positive happened, and the less. And it was just it's an association doesn't mean causation.
That's right.
Very interesting, isn't it?
It is really interesting. Yeah.
God, so let's start with red meat, because that's got some bad reputations. Now
it does.
Firstly, let's get into some biochemistry. Hit me with some chemistry, some severe biochemistry. Why red meat could be bad for some people.
So, I mean, a lot of the negative sort of connotations with red meat is heart disease.
Yep.
And even cancers, higher prevalence of cancers, colon cancers, heart disease.
That's
is
the
probably
associations.
The biggest one. The associations. Yep. Cardiovascular issues is really the main thing that sort of comes up with the red meat.
Yep.
So there has been a link between high TMAO levels and cardiovascular risk. So
trimethylamine oxidase. Yep.
Exactly. So that's sort of where we looked as to could that be the driver of why there is this connection between cardiovascular risk. So trimethylamine N-oxidase, or TMAO we're going to say, because otherwise I can't say that word every time.
Long, stupid word.
So it's a metabolite that's produced in our microbiome.
Ooh.
Yeah. That's been linked to cardiovascular disease, metabolic disorders, some other health conditions and things as well. And it's pretty much made by gut bacteria.
Right.
So this is where I think a lot of this we start to see some of the connections with the cardiovascular issues is the gut microbiome. And we're going to talk about the gut microbiome a bit today because I have my own theories about a lot of these things.
Yep.
And the gut's really central to a lot of it.
All right.
So, yeah.
Well, TMAO, what foods you have to eat or what nutrients you have to eat to produce it?
So red meat, eggs, fish, which we'll talk about because it's a little bit different, reacts a little bit differently.
It does, doesn't it?
And dairy.
And dairy.
Yeah. So it's derived from the metabolism of particular compounds. So your choline, L-carnitine, phosphatidylcholine, and betaine are the main ones.
All right. So that's interesting. So those things, people aren't going to go, well, they're good for you. I mean, what's going on there? And when it's good for you, is it good for you or is it good for you or you or you? It's not, we're not all the same. No. And you mentioned the microbiome. That's different in everybody.
It's very different in everybody. And look, I see a lot of microbiome. I do a lot of gut microbiome testing.
Yep.
So I see a lot of different results.
Yeah.
It's very interesting to see correlations with different diets and different levels of the TMAO and even branched-chain amino acids, which then can contribute to insulin issues as well. Gut-derived branched-chain amino acids.
Yeah, so that's the leucine, isoleucine, valine.
Yeah, so people think, that you get it in your pre-workouts and all that sort of thing, but your gut microbes can produce it.
Wow.
So if you're producing high levels of it, it can then create issues with insulin.
Because you're now just scared half our listeners because they're all trying to build muscle and they're sipping on their branched chains going, spraying it out.
And that's the thing. I mean, obviously they're fine, but you don't want to – people sip on branched chains all day, but people sip on branched chains when they're not exercising and not around exercising.
Yeah.
So there's also an issue there. But the gut bacteria definitely has a big player in that. So and then the same with this TMAO. Wow. So – any food that's high in, L-carnitine or choline, so they're red meat high in L-carnitine, right?
Well, you could be taking L-carnitine to burn fat. It's good for you.
Yeah, it's good for you. Yeah, definitely.
Good for whom?
That's
what I mean?
right. That's exactly right.
So we're starting to get to the bottom of all this business now. All right. Yeah. So what's high in choline?
Eggs.
Eggs, yep.
Yeah, egg yolks.
Ooh, it's one of the foods we're going to talk about.
We are going to talk about eggs. Yeah, there's again issues with
now fish contains TMAO.
Yeah, so
and fish helps your heart.
It does. Yeah, so this is interesting. So so fish contains a preformed TMAO.
Yeah.
So it leads to a temporary spike in TMAO levels. Yep. But it's not linked to cardiovascular disease the same as the TMAO produced from the microbes in your gut. which are feeding on the carnitine from the meats.
Wow.
So fish, yes, does have that, but it's not the same, and it doesn't have that impact at all. So that's why fish is still considered very beneficial, very good for cardiovascular health, the higher omega-3s.
Jeez.
So that's really interesting. So everyone that writes and said, well, what about fish? Well, fish is a little bit different.
And TMAO is that fishy smell.
Yeah. Yes, that's right. Exactly.
Amazing. All right. So So you mentioned the microbiome. So do you want to go through the steps about, how the microbiome produces this TMAO from TMA and all that sort of stuff?
Yep. So, and this is where it gets tricky, right? Because I will see stool analysis or gut microbiome mapping results of somebody who's on, say, a high meat diet or even a carnivore diet, because I've seen a lot of results of stool samples of people on carnivore diets that don't have high TMAO levels.
Now, carnivore diets are pretty much pure meat diets.
Yeah.
Eggs and all the things you've just said are bad.
Pretty much, yes.
And their TMAO levels are fine.
Fine, yes. And I have seen people on more of a plant, not purely plant-based, but more of a plant-based diet, so some meats in there, and they have TMAO levels off the charts.
Wow.
So what's going on there? So there's different, so there's different reasons, in my opinion, or my theorising. Genetics is one.
Genetics.
And genetics comes into play in everything, right? And we've talked about genetics in the past. So that is a factor. And within our gut microbiome, we all have very different microbiomes, and we have different potentials in our gut microbiome. So when we're talking about potential, with the testing now, we do what they call metagenomics testing, which is DNA level testing. So it's much more accurate than the previous testing that we used to do. So they can test sort of potential of what your microbes could potentially produce. So some people may have the potential to produce more TMAO than others. So there's that factor. And then there's a factor of just basically balance in the microbiome. So if you have very, very low levels of beneficial bacteria, it allows some of these other bacteria to then take over. And they can proliferate and they can become high levels. So they can then be producing a lot of TMAO because there's a lot of these bacteria.
Okay.
So a lot of it comes down to the gut, the balance, the good, between the commensal and the beneficial bacteria and the more inflammatory or even pathogenic bacteria. So that's where, if you have high TMAO levels and you've got cardiovascular issues and you go in and we look at your gut and we fix up the microbiome, that's going to reduce those TMAO levels, therefore reduce that risk of cardiovascular issues. So it all comes back to what you're feeding your bugs, basically.
So you could have superb bugs and eat meat 3 times a day and be fine.
Yeah.
Or you could be pretty much vegetarian-ish and to have TMAO levels through the roof.
So you could have high inflammation in your gut, which is then going to and when I say we've got to fix the ratios, there's a lot more to it because, as I said, there could be lots of inflammation. There could be gut hyperpermeability. You could have even a parasite in there. You could have something else that's disrupting this internal environment. So there's a lot to it. But, if you go in and fix everything up and everything's balanced out and there is still that genetic connection, so there is still some people who are more predisposed to these high levels of the TMAO, but is this the driver, a driver of why they say red meat, terrible, it's causing cardiovascular issues, that sort of thing. It's coming back to the TMAO level.
Wow.
Possibly.
I mean, there was one study that I saw, an association study with associated meat consumption with heart disease. And the questionnaire is whether you're eating meat, because it was what they call an observational study where they observed people and they did a history questionnaire and they said even eating pizza with meat on it was considered meat consumption.
So there's also that factor.
And hamburgers was the largest consumer of meat. So there's what they call confounding things on top of that. And of course, meat consumers in this group were heavier because if they ate more meat, they typically ate more food, which means they're typically heavier. And so there was BMI issues and that. And even you can't confound for all those things because you don't know the absolute risks.
Well, that's right. And then the processed meats are lumped into all this as well. So processed, like your deli meats and all that, which are full of nitrates and all the horrible stuff. So they lump them all in together.
Now, Nic, TMAO, you found an amazing link, a paper published this year from Medicine that showed that in 2024, they found a link between TMAO and hypertension, which is high blood pressure, which is a well-known risk for cardiovascular disease.
Yeah.
So this could be the link. But do you want to just talk about the study, read it out, and what it's all about?
It's a meta-analysis, Steve, in the journal Medicine.
Love it.
And the title of the paper is Relationship between trimethylamine N-oxide and the risk of hypertension in patients with cardiovascular disease.
Wow. So there's a relationship.
There is a relationship between TMAO and hypertension.
Hypertension is high blood pressure.
High blood pressure. So basically, I'll just read the conclusion. People can look up the paper. So patients with cardiovascular disease, the level of circulating TMAO is significantly related to hypertension. So the risk of hypertension increased 1% per every 1 millimole, increasing of TMAO levels, so 1 to 1, increasing hypertension. So therefore, is there then that correlation with hypertension, cardiovascular disease? So I thought that was very interesting.
That's fascinating because there's a few things that open up here. And that, I love that that's what I do, throw the paper. For those who are listening, you just frisbee the paper. That was awesome. Well, firstly, meta-analysis is good, strong evidence. But the second thing is that this may explain why some people can have TMAO till the cows come home and don't have heart problems. Because if TMAO is responsible for blood pressure, and it seems to be, then you could have good blood pressure like it's off camera, but I'm drinking this drink here, which is full of magnesium powder. Now, magnesium reduces blood pressure. It's well known to. Now, if I'm having loads of magnesium, a healthy exercise like I do, and I have loads of TMAO, it may not increase my blood pressure. So I may be okay with TMAO based on that mechanism of action. But you get the Joe six-pack there chopping down on hamburgers and lots of choline and lots of red meat. Their TMAO levels go up, their blood pressure goes up because they're having, shitty vegetable oils in the chips that they're having with the hamburgers, and that could really adversely affect them. So, there's a couple of variables. There's microbiome variables, and then there's this blood pressure link.
And could it even be, it's just theorising again.
Theorise away.
Could it be that if you have, that imbalance in the microbiome, gut microbiome, and more of these more inflammatory microbes that are proliferating, the inflammation can create high blood pressure as well. So
inflammation
could that also be a connection as to why the blood pressure goes up? So, there's lots of different thoughts around this.
And this could be why fish, with the high omega-3s, could be lowering, which lowers blood pressure. So that could be protective against the toxicity of TMAO. Wow, okay, geez. Yeah, super cool. I mean, it's absolutely incredible. And of course the liver makes TMAO, so wow. Yeah,
so there is particular bacteria that have been sort of connected to higher TMAO levels. So we all know Firmicutes. We all know about Firmicutes. We've heard about that before with polyphenols. But Firmicutes, proteobacteria, so they're sort of been implicated as sort of the key players in these conversion of the carnitine and the choline. And specific bacteria capable of producing TMA include species like Clostridias, Escherichias.
That's a bad one.
And they're really common. I see them often in the gut.
Oh, yeah, Clostridias everywhere, isn't
it? And look, there's some Clostridias that are commensals. And
that's
even
normal, commensal?
Yeah, Escherichias, some of them are also commensal, but there are some that can be more inflammatory.
Jeez.
So really interesting.
Complex stuff.
The gut microbes. And look, the more you get into gut stuff, and I love the gut stuff and the microbes, what they do, super fascinating. And the connections that with the different metabolites that they actually produce, in relation to health conditions, imbalances, it's really amazing.
It's really remarkable.
Yeah.
It really is remarkable. And, it's very interesting that there's this whole mechanism of action that seems to, it's sort of really, and I'm going to sound like a broken record, but one man's food's another man's poison.
100%.
And this is why those influencers, the carnivore influencers that come on and say, I've eaten carnivore for 5 years and I feel great and I've lost all the weight and I've got low heart disease, I've got clean arteries, blah, blah, blah. And you look at them and go, and then you get the comments below, which I always love reading. Yeah. And you feel like jumping in, but I can't.
No, I did that
it's a rabbit hole.
No, you don't want to start something.
No, it's an absolute nightmare rabbit hole. And so they'll say, no, it's bullshit. I tried this and it almost killed me. And they're both right.
They are both right.
Both right.
Which is what we said with the blood type diet, which came out a while ago. People are a lot, but a lot of people can be right because it comes back to, and therefore is it coming back to their gut microbiome and their genetics to a degree as well. How healthy is their gut microbiome? And I have seen people on carnivore diets, I've seen their microbiome where they actually have very good levels of commensal bacteria, so your healthy bacteria, which generally feed on fibre.
Yeah.
That's what we sort of recommend, more fibre to feed up these healthy bacteria, beneficial bacteria. They're not having any fibre.
No.
So they're still producing good levels of beneficial bacteria. So we did say, Steve, that TMO is then transported to the liver, TMA, where it's then converted to TMAO.
Yep, it's oxidised.
Yep, by an enzyme called the flavin-containing monooxygenase 3.
Geez, that one.
FMO3 for short.
Yeah, FMO3 is what it is, yeah.
And this is another theory. People with things going on with their liver. I don't know if that could impact different things, enzymes, what's there, what's not there. Yeah. Everyone has liver issues to a degree, not liver issues, but stagnation, congestion, all that sort of thing. But really interesting. So the liver is involved in that conversion to TMAO. So as we said, the influences of TMAO production are your high animal-based diets.
Yes.
That's in the literature.
Yeah.
But again, as we said, it comes back to your gut. So if you're on a high animal-based diet and you have really good gut microbiome balance, then you may not be producing – you're still going to be producing TMA.
Yeah.
But it's that balance. It's like everything. It's like when we talk about, say, somebody who has a lot of candida in there.
Yeah.
In their gut microbiome or candida species.
Yep.
If you can build up the beneficial bacteria, it actually crowds them out to a degree and it brings them back down to a normal level. So it's all about balance.
It is all about balance. It's funny, the study I've got, which I thought I'd bring to the table, is a really big one. It's published in the International Journal of General Medicine, and it's titled, wait for this, it's an amazing title. It says total meat intake is associated with life expectancy. So that's good news. A cross-sectional data analysis of 175 contemporary populations. So imagine looking at this Australian study, imagine looking at all those many populations and measuring how much meat you consume with your lifespan. So cut a long story short, the more meat you eat, the longer you live. I mean, that's what the title says.
Yeah.
And total meat is associated with life expectancy. So, except for one population.
Oh, right.
Well, you were going to get there.
Okay, sorry.
So, this published in the International Journal of General Medicine, I said 2022. So, it's out of Adelaide. And they looked at all these populations and they looked at life expectancy. Now, I'm going to hold the graph up here. You see how there's 6 graphs? And they're all going up, except for one that goes up and then down.
Down, like a frowny face.
The little frowny face. That's a very technical way.
Very technical, isn't it?
And here I was going to say, like a bell curve, but what an idiot. It's like a frowny face.
Just doing that for the lay people.
Yeah. No, it's right. It's very good because, frowny faces mean more. But they're all upticking, most of them, except for this one frowny face.
That's right.
So it did support your hypothesis about genetics.
Right.
So let's start with the Yanks because the Americans and, the more meat you eat per kilogram of body weight, the longer you live. So that's that top corner one there. You can see there that there's a slight uptick. The more meat you eat, the longer you live.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's the African one. Same thing. That's the East Mediterranean and the Europeans. You can see the Europeans is quite a strong increase.
Yeah, that's a good increase.
So that's interesting. Now, this frowny face, well, we'll get to this other one here. West Pacific's more meat you eat, the more you live. And this frowny face was interesting because this is the Southeast Asians.
Now that is interesting. And also because of what we're going to be talking about, dairy. Yeah. Very interesting, actually.
Very interesting. So they had a very frowny face and it peaked at about 20 kilograms of meat per year. So, the Americans peaked at about 115.
Wow.
So there's massive differences here between people. Actually, the biggest meat eaters in this population were the West Pacific Islanders.
Yeah, okay, that doesn't surprise me.
Europeans were pretty high. No Australians in here, which is a bit bad. I guess we could...
Well, we're big meat.
Well...
Really are traditionally quite big meat eaters.
We are, and we're probably like Americans and probably like Europeans because we're from European descent. You're German, I'm English, Scottish.
Yeah.
Scottish, did you like the Scottish?
Scottish, yeah.
Don't do cultural appropriation there for sure. Or can I appropriate it because I am part Scottish, like a very small part?
I don't know.
Can I wear a kilt to work? Is that all right too?
No, Steve, don't wear a kilt.
Shit.
No one's going to. No.
People love my legs.
That's true.
No, they don't.
No.
Beck loves my legs. That's it.
all that matters. That's all that matters.
So the more meat you eat, the longer you live.
And I wonder if that comes down to, again, don't shoot me. We're just theorising
We're going to shoot
so many
We're going to
things
shoot you.
because there's a lot of plant-based people who have very good muscle mass.
Yep.
But could it come down to the muscle mass, like amino acids?
Right.
Because we're going to be talking a little bit about that in another podcast.
Yeah.
Protein, and because obviously increased the higher muscle mass you have, obviously is longevity because, better blood sugar control, better lots of different things we'll talk about another time. But could that also be a possibility? It's just the protein possibly feeding the muscle. I don't know. I don't know. Just theorising.
You could hypothesise why that is. It's certainly this is meat consumption.
Yeah.
So it's not just protein.
No.
So very interesting. But I thought that study, and again, this as I said at the start of the podcast, I picked on longevity. You'd say, oh yeah, but meat causes heart disease. It may, but it may live you longer in other things.
Yes.
Whatever those other things are.
And then there's the people in the studies that lived longer. Did they have a great microbiome? They could handle the meat. They could handle the TMAO levels. They were breaking it down effectively. It wasn't impacting the balance in the microbiome. There's so many ways we could look at that.
Well, these are huge studies, so it's over a massive population cohort.
Yeah.
It's the biggest one I found. So that's why I picked on this one. So very interesting. Very interesting. So that's interesting. But
Really interesting.
More meat, the longer you live. Now, again, what does that mean? Does that mean you should eat loads of meat? No, because it may not work for you.
That's 100%.
Well, I was telling you about an influencer who lives on the Gold Coast, who my wife follows, and blah blah blah, and she's a mainly vegan and eats meat sporadically. I knew you laughed at that.
I know she's vegan, but eats meat occasionally.
And she looks sensational.
I do know. I have heard of a few vegans that eat chicken. I'm a vegan, but I eat chicken. I shouldn't laugh.
To us, it's like saying I'm a man, but I'm really a woman. You know what I mean? It's like dichotomy opposites.
Yeah, I know. I know. Maybe they don't. Some people maybe aren't completely aware of what veganism is, but that's okay. But anyway,
so this whole meat thing. I know we've got a few other ingredients to go through. So can we just summarise the meat thing? And
so I think and this whole podcast is about demonisation of foods that maybe shouldn't be, or maybe they haven't. And they should be. But in this case, I think red meat has been demonised quite a lot.
Yes.
And we wanted to know why. And I think this is probably why, to a large degree, the microbiome's impact on the production of TMAO levels and how that impacts everything. So summarise this. If you've got a really healthy, balanced microbiome, you're probably not going to have any major issues with red meat.
You seem to live longer.
Of course, there's all other variables, but I don't think that it should be. And look, I'm actually not a big red meat. I don't like eating red meat, to be honest. So it's not like I'm sitting here saying, yes, I think we should all eat red meat because I think I eat it. I actually don't really enjoy eating red meat.
I love it.
You love red meat, I know. I could actually be vegetarian quite easily.
Don't become one of those.
No, I could. I have been vegan in the past. I was a vegan for 5 years, many years ago.
Right, you told me that.
I told you that, but I could just. For me, it didn't work. Some people it works really well. For me, I couldn't maintain muscle mass, but I could definitely be a I told you I was a vegetarian. I could be a vegetarian again tomorrow.
A pescatarian
vegetarian, Steve.
Vegetarian. That is a cooler word.
Catchy.
We were learning in universities as pescatarian, but what did you call it? Aquatarian. No, what did you call it?
Vegetarian.
Vegetarian.
It's mine. Anyone can use that.
I'll let anyone use that. That's better than what we were taught.
But yes. Anyway. So from what we sort of looked at here, I don't believe red meat is the devil.
No.
Some people, yes, may have issues with it, and some people not. And as we said, could be your gut. So
we wish we could be more defensive. We say bad, good, bad. We'd love to be black and white, but we can't be because these people are different.
Yeah. And if you wanted to look into it further and you do have cardiovascular issues, I mean, if I see clients with they come to with cardiovascular issues, 99% of the time I will do gut microbiome testing for this reason, because of the TMAO levels, obviously other inflammatory issues going on in the gut that are contributing. But this would be one thing I'd probably look into, gut health.
And you're a practicing naturopath. Nicole Brown naturopathy is what you're looking up, aren't you? And so if you're interested in all this sort of stuff about meat, and we've got other foods to go through to get to those, but, talk to yourself about it. So someone like you who knows about
any
this. Any
practitioner that can do functional testing and, have a look into it. It's really interesting.
Okay, we've got another demonised food here. We better
I know we may not even get through them all.
Well, let's just go for salt then.
Okay.
Because that's the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
Salt's bad, surely. Come on. You can't add salt to things. That'll kill you, won't it?
Yeah, terrible salt, isn't it? It's also the devil.
It's the devil, but also it's sodium chloride for the nerdy chemists out there. And in other words, sodium. Sodium is essential for humans.
Yes.
So we need some of it.
We do.
So where's the sweet spot? I mean, should we put salt on everything, or where's the sweet spot? And our kidneys are great at regulating sodium. So we've got these balancing mechanisms. Too much salt tastes shitty to humans, but salt does enhance the flavour of food. So there's something in it. But you want to start with salt and what your take on salt is?
Yeah. So I think. And I think a lot of people are aware now where the whole issue with salt being an issue with hypertension and all those other issues is because it was when the movement of the processed foods came in.
Yeah.
And everyone's eating processed foods, which are laden with salts.
Salt, yeah.
So people we're getting so much salt.
Yeah.
We're getting all these issues with, as I said, cardiovascular, heart disease, the hypertension, all the things.
Yep.
But they were eating way too much salt, way too much. And it was in processed foods, which again, contributing factors.
Now, this is where we get association doesn't mean causation.
Yeah.
Because what we found in studies, and I'll simplify this. Say you eat McDonald's 3 times a day. I'm going to exaggerate this. So you have breakfast, lunch, dinner. You're going to be having loads of sodium, all right? And therefore, you could easily say in a study, because you're having loads of sodium, eating 3 loads of McDonald's, sodium will kill you and harms you. But there's other things in McDonald's foods. And we know salt is, I don't know anyone who eats salt on their own. Cows have salt licks.
Salt licks, yeah. Used to give it to the horses, salt licks.
My sister's horse has a salt lick. And loves it. But humans typically don't eat salt on its own. So it's very hard to confine for that. So the early study says there's an association between sodium intake, salt intake, and heart disease or high blood pressure.
Yeah.
Association.
Yes.
And they picked on sodium. And was that the thing that was the causer? So tell us a bit about salt. Or what does salt do? What does it do?
So that it's been connected to things. Oh, actually, I'll go into this instead. This is actually very interesting with salt.
Yeah.
And people may not know so much about this. It may influence autoimmune disease.
Whoa.
Which is pretty big, and some people may not be aware of it. But yeah, it has been linked to things such as multiple sclerosis, rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, type 1 diabetes, inflammatory bowel diseases.
Yeah.
So therefore,
and my shitty disease too. AS, ankylosing spondylitis, heavily linked with that.
Yeah. So very interesting. So it has an impact on the T helper 17 cells, which
that's mine. That's my baby.
Autoimmune conditions.
Yep.
So high salt intake. So there's a lot of research has shown that high salt diet can stimulate the differentiation and activation of the T helper 17 cells.
Which secretes which interleukin?
Interleukin 17.
My students just love that because it's the same one.
Yeah, that's an easy one, isn't
it?
Yeah. So overproduction of T helper 17 can, be implicated in several autoimmune conditions, as we said. So a 2013 study published in Nature found that high salt concentrations enhanced T helper 17 activity in both mice and humans, promoting inflammation and exacerbating autoimmune conditions like experimental autoimmune encephalomyelitis, EAE,
brain problem,
a mouse model, of multiple sclerosis. So this isn't saying that everyone who has high salt intake is going to get an autoimmune condition. That's not what we're saying.
No.
But if you have an autoimmune condition, could this then, if you're having a high salt diet, could this be driving it to a degree or continuing to drive it?
Yeah, it certainly could be.
So I thought that was really interesting. And there's also the molecular mimicry, and I think salt comes in under that as well, along with grains with autoimmune conditions. So that's one thing that maybe some people maybe aren't aware of, that there is a lot of research and some studies around that. So if you do have an autoimmune condition and you're on a very high salt diet or you're taking in a lot of salt, possibly relook at that.
Yeah.
And it's not a matter of going low salt. It's just moderate, like a moderate amount of salt. And if you're not eating processed foods and you're salting your own food, you should be fine unless you're over-salting.
That's the 64. I mean, I haven't eaten McDonald's for maybe 30 years. I think the last time I ate it was when I was on the road playing music. So I was about 25.
Last time I ate it was after a comp. Finished a comp, and I won't even tell you what I ate.
No, tell us what you now listeners are going to go,
so
well, what did she eat? What did you eat?
I wasn't a naturopath at the time, but I was into health, obviously. But I'd finished my last comp, and I had lost the last comp that I ever did actually, and I had lost an exceptionally large amount of weight.
You're extremely lean.
Very, very lean. I think it was 5% body fat at that point. It was ridiculous. But
women should be about 25% body fat, just for people who are listening.
Yeah, and if anyone who's very underweight doesn't have a period, because I see a lot of clients like this, 17% would be kind of the minimum to actually produce hormones. Anyway, we digress. I ate. I actually had a firm-sized pizza, but on the way home, we stopped in a McDonald's and they had the McFlurries, and I got 3 McFlurries, and I ate them all by the time I got home.
No way.
Yeah, because I'd been starving for like 16
So you put on about
weeks.
5 kilos in one afternoon?
No, I didn't put in any weight. I just body straight through. I then struggled to put on weight after that for a couple of months. But that was the last time I had any McDonald's food.
Mine was in
McFlurries.
I remember. I think it was in Emerald. We were touring. We did a gig with the Choir Boys. If they're still around.
I love the Choir Boys. Yeah.
And I think it was late at night and starving because I was 25. I think it was my 25th birthday. Like I was that young and just ate McDonald's dinner. It made me feel sick in the guts and I couldn't sleep. And I went, that's it, I'm not eating this crap. I wasn't a naturopath, I wasn't studying, but it was just disgusting. I couldn't hack it.
No, it's not.
So something, So again, it's not just sodium. Because I've had salty, like have you seen my nuts?
Oh, we nearly got through a full podcast without Steve talking about his mixed nuts.
Now, they are salty as heck, right? And I had a handful of nuts. Yeah, don't laugh. People are going to write in.
People are going to write in.
But my nuts are salty.
The mixed nuts that are in the packet that you have sitting on the desk are very salty.
Very salty nuts.
So clarify.
And so I ate a lot of those. And I don't have any problems with that because they're sodium and the nuts are healthy. My nuts are good.
I do have a lot of. I do salt my food quite heavily. I'm quite
so do I.
A salter.
You have some of my nuts too.
Yes, Steve, I do.
Actually, Matt behind the camera has some of my nuts. I gave him, so I'm not discriminatory here. But they're high in sodium, but they're healthy.
Yes.
Because there are loads of potassium too, which helps regulate sodium.
That's right, exactly.
All right, so that's incredible. So, I mean, it can cause autoimmune disease. Now, interleukin-17 is also good for us, not just an evil dictator.
That's right.
So, and by increasing interleukin-17, you're downregulating TLP2, which means that you can regulate, maybe have a benefit to have more sodium.
Yeah,
so,
exactly. Here's another impact of high salt.
Go for it. Tell us.
It impacts the microbiome.
Of course, everything. What about the microbiome? Poor old microbiome cops it.
It does cop it. So high salt intake, we're talking, it's been shown to reduce the diversity of some of the beneficial bacteria in the gut. So lactobacillus species, which I have to say they're not a native species in our gut. Everyone thinks lactobacillus, because that's all the probiotics in the past were lactobacillus. It's not actually a native in our gut. And I've seen microbiome tests where people have none.
Most of them have none.
Yeah, because it actually comes from the diet.
I think when we did a trial here on polyphenols and we tested the microbiome changes, one of them had lactobacillus acidophilus in it.
Acidophilus I would very, very, very rarely see. Rarely see.
We saw 1 in 23.
Yeah.
And that was a fluke. So
some people don't have any. But it can impact our gut microbiome, our beneficial bacteria, which then can create imbalances, that can create inflammation, that could then create gut hyperpermeability. That could then be a driver of the autoimmune condition.
Absolutely. It could be 𝐏𝐔𝐃𝐂𝐂𝐑𝐈𝐻 gut, huge.
Yeah.
So the diversity index called the Shannon Index. I don't know why. Don't know who Shannon is. But
my brother's name's Shannon.
Well, there you go. It's named after him, the diversity. All right. So we get this inflammation and we get this regulatory things and we exacerbate autoimmune diseases and MS, you said. I mean, MS is was when you get an autoimmune disease of the myelin sheaths of the brain.
Yeah.
Very devastating disease.
Yeah. Yeah. So there was a study with it. It was a mouse model study, yes, but the high salt intake was shown to aggravate symptoms of multiple sclerosis in mice.
Wow.
So that's really interesting.
Now, that's tricky because MS is a difficult one to see how it goes in humans because we're different anatomically.
Well, that's right.
Do mice have a high sodium diet naturally, or have they had that? I don't know. Do they? Is that natural food for a mouse to eat?
I don't know.
Hunt down and kill a block of cheese.
What was it? Not Ben and Jerry. Jerry and what was the Tom and Jerry?
Tom and Jerry. You are showing your age now.
I know. They used to do them. The chicken cheese.
Yeah.
You know what you can actually no. I'm not going to say that.
Oh,
I nearly did catch myself out there. But mice love peanut butter. But there was a human study published in the Journal of Neurology, Neurosurgery and Psychiatry in 2015.
Great. I love human studies because rats lie.
Good. That's right. And they studied individuals with MS who consumed higher levels of sodium and they had a greater risk of experiencing relapses and more severe disease progression.
Wow. Now, I wonder if they stratified adding salt to healthy foods like vegetables and meats and that.
That's right.
Or they just had junk food diet, which is high in salt. So this is very interesting, though. Very interesting. So it's a potential trigger, I think we can call that.
Potential trigger, yeah. So it's just something, I guess, to be mindful of, really.
Yeah. Now, look, I've got a study here on salt, and it's a pretty good one because it's a massive one. I'm going to read it out, and this tells you the story. Sodium intake, sodium is sodium chloride salt, sodium intake, life expectancy and all-cause mortality, European Heart Journal 2021. So what they looked at here was the sodium intake and if you're going to die. All right, which I think is a cool one.
Yes.
Now, it's a really, really cool trial. Now, I've printed it out in colour. I don't normally do that because I'm cheap. But I've got a study here. Now, I'm going to hold it up here. I'm going to hold up the camera. For those who, now you can describe it because you said smiley faces, but
I'm not going to say smiley faces again.
It's a bit of a weird one here. It's got sort of two graphs going out here. Now, the top graph here, along here is healthy life expectancy, and you got sodium intake along the bottom there. So it's a little bit tricky. But as you can see by the blue graph here, because this is the blue one, and this is the reds are all-cause mortality, so deaths, okay? And as you can see, as the sodium intake goes up, the life expectancy goes up. And the numbers of deaths go down. And they're obviously completely inverse to each other. So you may as well just get rid of the red one, just look at lifespan. Now, you see these little lines at the start here? That's what we're recommended to have, sodium-wise. Different heart foundations. And you can see way beyond that, up to 6 grams a day of sodium. So that's...
Of sodium,
Of sodium, that's about 14 grams of sodium chloride, because sodium only makes up 40% of sodium chloride.
Yeah.
So you can have 14 grams of salt, and that's when you live the longest.
And we did a podcast on salts, was it hydration, I think? So you can go back and listen to that podcast. We talk all about salt. But, yeah, definitely. I mean, I reckon I would have a couple of teaspoons of salt a day.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's about 10 grams of salt.
Yeah, easy.
Yeah. Well, do you add my nuts into that? That's the last nut joke for the day.
That's the last one, everybody. I'm sorry. I apologise on behalf of...
Yeah, we didn't mean it in any offensive manner and all that stuff. No. But, mate, you want to live longer, eat more salt. Now, you can argue with that. You can debate that. Well, right off to the European Society of Cardiology and the European Heart Journal, because they're the ones that sort of say it. And it's a big study, all-cause mortality. Oh, yeah, but increased blood pressure. Yeah, but forget mechanism. This is death. That's why I've picked death as a marker, because it's kind of important.
And the thing is, we have to remember that there's so many people eat some processed foods, and people might not, they might eat some crackers, like some, I don't know, like cracker biscuits or whatever they, put cheese or something
biscuits
on them or whatever. They're hugely high in sodium. So you might have 3 or 4 of them, and that's going to be a lot of sodium, and then you add sodium. So when you say, 6 grams of salt, it's not a lot if you're eating whole foods, not non-processed foods, and you're adding salt to foods where you're not getting packet foods with salt in it. So I think that's where the lines blur, because everybody eats, most people would eat some type of processed foods at some point. If it's a healthy, like a cracker, they think it's healthy.
It's funny, I don't think we do we?
No. I'm just trying to think. No, I don't really eat processed foods.
I don't anymore. I don't eat any breads ever.
No, I don't eat any of that sort of stuff.
I'll eat steak with salt on it.
Yeah, like I said, I salt all my veggies and my salads and my proteins and eggs. And
all my eggs are salt, yeah. Well, there you go. Isn't that interesting? So salt, it could be bad, could be good. You live longer if you have more of it, but if you've got an autoimmune disease, maybe problematic. Depends on the individual.
It depends on the individual, yeah. And as a last bit of bad news about salts.
Give me more bad news.
Are some salts healthier than others? So, Himalayan or Celtic or sea salt or lake salts or that type of thing? No. Sorry.
Thanks, Nick.
They're really not. I mean, obviously the bleached table salt, obviously that's bad. You don't want to have the bleached table salts. But the rest of them pretty much, nutritional analysis is very similar. So
in the 1930s, they started to iodize salt, which is put iodine in there because of our iodine deficiency. And also chlorine, the atom, not sodium. The chloride atom knocks out iodine because it's in the same group 7 on the periodic table. So it's in the same as bromide, iodine, those sort of ones down there, chloride.
Yeah.
So those ones, group 7 on the periodic table for the nerds out there. But that's why they iodize salt, if you're wondering, because it helps your thyroid.
Thyroid, yeah. And then people were like overdosing on that and they were getting too much iodine a lot of time, and then you have another problem.
Oh, dear.
So summary of salt that's been demonised, and I think we've moved past that to a degree. But yes, no. Unless you're having a high salt diet, you have an autoimmune condition, look into that a little bit further maybe, because there is quite a few studies around to show that could be detrimental if you're having a higher salt diet. And don't turn around and have no salt if you've got an autoimmune condition. It's not what we're saying. Just monitor your salt intake.
Oh, sodium's essential.
Yeah, exactly. So I think we can move on from that.
Cool.
Say that salt is good.
Let's move on from that. What do you got next here? Oh, dairy. Oh, here we go.
This is controversial, isn't it, Steve?
Because we're all told you got to drink milk for your bones.
Yeah.
When did it all start? When did this all start with this, the drinking another animal's white pussy stuff?
I like to know why. Who was the first person that went, you know what, there's a cow, I might just
suck on that thing that dangles down.
So, right. Anyway, so good. Moving on really fast.
Very fast.
So where did it all start? So just domestication of animals, right? So the consumption of animal milk can be traced back to when animals were first domesticated, which was around 7,000 to 9,000 years ago.
Right.
So in areas in the Middle East, Asia, Central Asia. So that's kind of, that's kind of where things started.
Okay.
And then interesting, over time, some human populations, particularly in Europe, developed a genetic trait known as lactase persistence.
Oh, my God.
Allowing adults to digest the lactose in milk.
There you go. Now, the reason why they call it persistence is because we're born with lactase because we suck on human breasts, which have lactose in it.
We're breastfed, yes, and then we end up losing that eventually, and that's why, because I'm going to get shot down for this.
Oh, here we go.
Physiologically, we have milk to grow, and then we're weaned. We move on. We have teeth, obviously, so we don't need to breastfeed anymore. We lose that enzyme that breaks down the lactase because we don't need it anymore. Yeah. So that's why, and we will actually talk about the different populations who are lactose intolerant. There's areas who have a lot higher population of lactose intolerance.
All right.
But in Europe, they persisted and they managed to develop that enzyme back so they can break down that lactose. So then, and I guess we're talking about dairy as a whole, but cow's milk's probably one of the worst, isn't it, really?
It is. Cheese has been reacted with an enzyme called rennet.
Yeah.
And so it's sort of deactivated. Yogurt's been fermented with bugs.
Yep. And then we can talk about the fermented and the cultured dairies, because they actually can be quite beneficial for the gut bacteria, the gut microbiome.
So milk's the one that's promoted by, you got to have, what do they used to say, 2 or 3 glasses of milk a day? I'm really hard to ignore the recommendations of government departments these days. I struggle to...
There we go. So post-war era, so modern dietary guidelines, Steve.
Yeah, post-war era. When I was a kid, yep.
When you went through the war. So they recommended 2 to 3 serves of dairy per day for their calcium and vitamin D status. So that's got 2 to 3 serves a day of dairy is a fair bit. So a serve would be a cup of milk. Probably something along those lines.
I hard to ignore these.
30 grams of cheese, or I'm not sure.
Yeah. But I want to quote a guy that I've followed for many years, and normally you don't sort of follow people as scientists, but Bodo Melnick, we've talked about him for years. He's one of the best researchers, and my father-in-law, Dr. Doug, loves this guy too, Bodo Melnick. And he loves him because we did a massive talk to dermatologists about 10 years ago about how dairy causes acne. And it's like, oh, okay. And so I've got a paper from Bodo, and it's got, I'm going to love this one, 555 references.
Is that all? All?
These references, and it's like I normally wouldn't bother with, like that. I wouldn't even normally say, but that is
that whole
nuts.
paper is virtually all references.
And the paper is called "Lifetime Impact of Cow's Milk on Overactivation of Mammalian Target of Rapamycin Complex 1, or mTORC1, from fetal childhood overgrowth, acne, diabetes, cancers, and neurodegeneration."
Wow.
And he basically goes through this literature showing that if you have the recommended allowance of dairy and milk in your diet, it triggers a cascade which leads to translocation of cells and those diseases. And if you want to know how that works, it's just a nice little simple graph there that I'm holding up to the camera, and it's nuts, right? It's nuts. It just goes through all the things. And you see up the top there, dairy going in. And, it turns into whey protein and caseins, which are the two proteins from the intestine. And it really is an amazing mechanism of action of how it works. So, mTOR, for the guys out there that are trying to build muscle, mTOR is what you want.
That's right. We've talked about that before. Yeah. mTOR is growth, building.
Yep.
So you don't want to be in growth phase all the time, because then you're growing things that maybe you don't want to grow.
Yeah, getting growth disorders. So I mean, this paper is absolutely phenomenal to go through if you really want to know how it all causes this, and it's absolutely remarkable. I emailed him many years ago, and he emailed back. I felt like a rock star.
Steve-o.
No, he's got his email on it. It's not. So I love this guy. I just think his research is phenomenal.
It's amazing.
He really is a bit of a nerd on this topic, and absolutely amazing. He started off as a dermatologist, so that's why we got into him, because he had papers in 2013 on acne and acneogenic foods. Now, acne's bad and all that, but then when you start talking about, diabetes, cancers, and neurodegeneration, you're in trouble there. So that's what this paper talks about. So the overconsumption of milk, how much is it? Is certainly, if you drink, in some of the cases here, 49.5 litres per year, up to 130.5 litres per year. Now, you might be going, that's a lot of milk, 130 litres. Break it down.
Yeah.
That's if you had 3 litres a week, or, one of those 600 mils milk every day.
The big M's, Steve.
Big M's. Yeah, big M's from Melbourne.
I
don't know what they're called in Queensland. They're big M's as far as them.
They are.
But you're way over that level.
Yeah,
and that's one a day. Forget any coffee or any of that crap. So you're going to really easily meet this target of getting that super high level. So anything over 49 litres is where they found problems a year. So that's quite disturbing, because this was recommended as a health food.
Yeah.
And can it still be used? Look, if you don't give a like in your day when you were building muscle, that was the focus. It wasn't health, was it?
No. Well, the whole,
I shouldn't say you.
The sport I was in was not a healthy sport. Sorry for people doing it. It's really not.
And let's say you're a Ronnie Coleman and you want to build muscle. You may want this milk stimulation with your whey protein or whatever, and you may want to grow. That's where milk can be used, but I'd be very careful too, because there's other problems with milk, like hormones, Nic.
Yes, and I have a bit of a breakdown. So, and again, as you said, milk can be good, but this is, full disclosure, I don't do dairy. You don't do dairy.
No, I don't do dairy.
I haven't did.
I'm biased. I know.
Look, actually, I will occasionally have a bit of goat's cheese, occasionally, because that's my favourite.
That's it.
But that's it.
I eat like yogurts now, but not milk.
Oh, see, I don't even do it. I don't do any of that. I don't do any yogurts. I don't do anything. But I will do a bit of goat's cheese because it's amazing. But and also the proteins are a little bit easier to break down because they're smaller proteins.
They're already being digested.
Yeah, and goat and that sort of stuff is easier. But yes, so first of all, I can talk about the populations with lactose.
Lactose, yeah.
Because that's very interesting, because this is interesting because we were talking about the meats. So who do you think is what sort of cultural area do you think has the highest rate of lactose intolerance?
Intolerance, I would say Africans.
East Asia.
Oh, shit, I was off.
You were way
I just guessed that one. East Asians,
Asia.
they were up there too, yeah.
Yeah, so China, Japan, Korea, up to 90 to 100% of adults are lactose intolerant in
So they should
those Asian
be.
regions.
They're the smart ones.
Yeah, right. And that's so they don't really do
They drink it,
really.
they get a bloated gut. Now I'm drinking this white crap. Yeah.
Yep. So sub-Saharan Africans,
Oh, yeah.
rates of lactose intolerance are quite high, ranging from 70 to 90%.
So I got a B for that exam.
However, the Maasai have developed some level of lactase persistence because they do have a lot of
Raw milk.
Raw milks.
They drink milk and blood.
Yeah, milk and blood, yeah. And I'm going to go talk about the raw milks too because I have a theory. Native Americans, 80 to 100% intolerance. South
makes
Asians,
sense.
Mediterranean, Middle East populations between 60 and 80% in lactose intolerance. And Northern Europeans are
That's me.
below 10%.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, because they develop that lactose persistence, so in those
Jesus.
areas. So I thought that was really interesting. But getting on to the hormones. So this is the thing.
Come on.
And
if this has got testosterone in it, I'm going to start drinking it.
No. And we talk from a science perspective as well, and we're just giving the science.
Yep.
But, we all have our personal opinions as well. And I don't always recommend dairy-free to all my clients by any means at all. I think dairy can be okay for some people. I, however, don't drink it because it's from a lactating cow or a lactating animal. So
I know.
So they're the hormones in it. So
another mammal, like a different mammal to us.
Yeah, a different mammal to us.
It's weird that we drink that shit that comes out. It's like, to me, I'm biased.
We will sort of highlight our biases here that we don't do dairy, but we're trying to be not so biased, and we're just looking at what the research says.
So what hormones in it? Is it going to give me a test boost?
Yeah, probably not, Steve. But there is hormones in it. So
cool. Which ones?
Estrogens.
Great. I want more of that.
30 to 50 picograms per milliliter.
Ooh, that's a fair bit. I'm showing people my boobs, so they're not.
Progesterone.
Yeah.
So up to 10 to 30 nanograms per milliliter.
Some in there.
And look, these are small amounts, but it's there.
You drink it every day.
Yeah, if you're drinking it, and I know some people that will chug a lot of milk. So I've had some people who do a litre of milk a day. That's what they drink, is their fluid intake is milk.
Really?
Yeah. I don't.
Humans?
Yes.
Not four-legged furry things that go moo?
No, not those. Well, they probably do too, but... And here's an interesting one. Insulin-like growth factor 1.
Way,
1 to 10 1 to 10 nanograms per milliliter. But here's where the acne issue comes in. So people with acne, and they've got this in IGF-1, can be a driver of acne because it creates sebum and the oils in the skin, that sort of thing. So prolactin.
What?
1 to 40 nanograms per milliliter.
And no one wants that unless you're trying to, feed another baby.
Well, I mean, it's a lactating animal, so it's going to be producing prolactin, right?
Yes, yuck.
Corticosteroids, cortisol. God. There's cortisol in milk. 1 to 2 nanograms per milliliter. So this is what we're talking trace.
Yeah.
But, we're just breaking it down. Steve-o.
Yes.
Testosterone.
Right, I'm on where's the milk? Testosterone, how much am I getting?
Well, less than 1 nanogram per milliliter.
Shit.
So you want to be drinking a hell of a lot to get the testosterone.
But then I get all the estrogen that's 50 to 30 times higher.
I know, a lot of estrogen, obviously, because a female animal, lactating animal. There is actually some thyroid hormone in there, T3, T4.
Yeah, if you need it or not, it's in there.
Trace amounts. So if you've got thyroid issues, don't go chugging heaps of dairy to try and get because it's very small amounts.
Yeah.
And parathyroid hormone, there's also very small amounts as well. And trace amounts of leptin.
Oh, my God. So parathyroid hormone leaches calcium from your bones, so there's a little bit of an issue there.
Yeah.
So, wow. Okay.
So, I mean, and yes, people will say, yes, but it's in very trace amounts and it's been shown, and it has been shown in research, it doesn't really affect, but I don't buy that entirely. I don't think that we should be having too much of that. But again, each their own. We're not saying it's terrible. And as you said, it's the small amounts, and for the most part, they may not impact somebody, but they may. And I've seen people that have gone off dairy that have hormonal issues and skin issues, obviously the IGF-1 and other issues that it has definitely helped. So again, case by case, individuality. Some people are fine with it. Some people that have issues, and as I said, I don't take a I don't take everyone off dairy, but I do take some people off dairy.
Wow.
And they have improvements. So whether they have issues with the digestion of it, whether they have other issues with it. So here's my next theory, Steve.
Next theory.
I have lots of theories.
Go for another theory.
So, you know, modern society, we can't just drink milk straight out of from the cow or put it in a bottle and drink it later because of the bacteria and things like that. So they process it so that they kill off all the bacteria. So pasteurization, homogenization, all of that.
Pasteurized means kills bugs. Homogenized means it mixes
the fats and things. So, you know, it's highly processed milk. So therein itself becomes an issue.
Yeah.
Is that where maybe it becomes more inflammatory? Because I don't know, probably when you were growing up, Steve, be my parents when my parents were growing up, my mum, and you'd get the milk and it'd have the cream on it, like in the glass bottle, it'd be dropped off. That. And you would have been old enough, had the cream on top.
I remember it clearly.
Yeah, so, and it wasn't all treated, and it was, I think, a lot better back then than it is now.
Oh, yeah.
So there is things called beauty milks now. I don't know if you've seen beauty milks.
Oh, yeah. It's a very controversial area, this one.
Very controversial. So they're not for human consumption, but you can bathe in it. So I used to.
You know you're on camera when you put the.
I know. I years ago worked in a health food store and people would come in for their beauty milk to have a bath.
Oh, yes.
So, because, there is that factor of less processed. Say what you will, I probably don't agree with having that either because there's dangers involved, and if anyone's doing that, we are definitely not saying do not consume that milk, but could the processing be part of it? Because it can create a lot of inflammation in the body.
Exactly. And I mean, you know, even if you have raw milk, it's still got all those hormones in it.
Oh, 100%. It's still got all the hormones. It just doesn't have the processing. So what's the better of two? I don't think there is a better of two evils in that case. But dairy's very controversial, and there's some people, it's kind of like religion. It's like people get very touchy about telling them not to have dairy. So we're not saying don't have dairy, but there is some issues around it. As you said, the mTOR.
Yeah, that's bad.
The IGF-1, the skin issues, that it can be quite inflammatory. A lot of people are lactose intolerant.
Yep.
But a lot of people, and it's like with gluten, they have it so often, they don't know that they don't know that they've got the inflammation until they stop having it, and they go, well, you know what? I actually feel a lot better. And then they'll bring it back in. And then they go, oh, wow, I feel terrible, because they now have a comparison to having it their whole life and then taking it out and going, oh, I actually didn't realise how inflamed I felt or inflamed I was, because now I have contrast when I took it out and then I put it back in again.
Amazing stuff. I mean, we better move on to our next food too. What about eggs?
I don't know, eggs.
Eggs.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got a study here on eggs. I can start with my study if you want.
Yeah, good, because I don't have eggs in my house.
No, eggs is good. Eggs is good. Because we did a podcast recently on LDL cholesterol and the consumption of cholesterol, which is what everyone talks about when it comes to egg. Yes. Everyone admits it's good protein. So if you consume whole eggs, it's got cholesterol in it, that reduces Alzheimer's by about 30% in dementia. So pretty good consuming cholesterol seems to be good. But there's a study here where they looked at the Chinese population, which is a pretty big population, over 1 billion. Frequency of egg intake is associated with mortality in Chinese adults and 8-year things, and they looked at the associations, and they found the more eggs, the less you died. Yeah. I'll read the summary. Egg consumption may be associated with lower risks of mortality in Chinese adults. Our findings found moderate to high egg consumption might be beneficial in improving long-term health and longevity. So again, I've just picked longevity, life, because that's important, that if you have more eggs, you live longer. Now, that was in a Chinese cohort, so it was the moderate to high levels that had the longest follow-up. So that was a massive study, nationwide cohort of 30-odd thousand people, aged 16 to 110.
Wow.
Someone was 110. Yeah.
But what does it do? What do eggs have in them? Choline.
Choline,
so we circle back to the beginning of the podcast, TMAO.
Wow, and it's got L-carnitine in it too.
L-carnitine, yeah. So there are people called hyper responders in regards to eggs.
Yeah.
Cholesterol.
Right, okay.
And that's circles around a little bit. But then is that going back to they have very high TMAO levels? Could that be impacting cardiovascular issues? That, the cholesterols, they're not just – there's so much in it. So I think with everything that we've talked about, and we know we skipped over eggs because we pretty much ran out of time. I think we spent too much time on the meat. But my take on it is, from a naturopathic sort of lens, it's the gut is a major player in so many things, right?
Sure.
And it's like what are we feeding in our gut? Are we feeding the bacteria that are producing more of these metabolites, so TMAO, branched chain amino acids, other inflammatory metabolites, that's then creating these issues? If we then work on the gut, balance it out, bring up more of those beneficial bacteria so we have a better balance, crowding out some of these more these bacteria that produce these metabolites, do we then reduce or alleviate some of these issues?
Sure.
So there is no good foods and bad foods. No. There's just foods.
Yeah.
And it's how your body reacts to the foods, what your microbiome is doing, in how that's sort of processing, how many of these bugs are you growing. If you're on a high, we didn't talk about the saturated fats in, say, the dairy, that sort of thing as well, the saturated fats.
I've got one study here on saturated fats. It's called Saturated Fats, Dairy Foods and Cardiovascular Health. No longer a curious paradox. It's a nice study, isn't it? So sort of saying basically the saturated fats is not really a problem in this particular study. Yeah.
Unless, of course, you go back to the gut.
Yep.
And you're feeding bacteria, so your Bilophila wadsworthia, they produce hydrogen sulfide gas, which is highly inflammatory.
And highly smelly.
It can cause a lot of inflammation in the gut, can cause gut hyperpermeability, which then can cause issues with, inflammation in the body, which then creates issues with cardiovascular issues in some people. So it comes down to what you're feeding your gut. How much are you feeding it? Where's the balance? Where, are you getting your fibres in there to feed the beneficial bacteria, so you're getting better balance? Are you growing more of these bacteria that are producing some of these metabolites? So, I don't think you can say any food is good or bad.
No.
It's individuality, it's genetics, and it's gut microbiome, and it's processing of the foods and different things as well. So,
one thing about the eggs we talked about was that it may increase LDL cholesterol. And LDL used to be associated with heart disease. And what we now know, and this is in that paper, big review paper, it says these data suggest that LDL cholesterol alone is not a consistently good predictor or cause of cardiovascular disease. So that's what the study says. So it's now sort of, there's too many other confounding factors in all this sort of stuff that tricks heart disease. So we used to think LDL bad, kill it at all costs. And so there's a lot going on here.
We just did another LDL cholesterol / subfractions podcast recently, so go back and have a listen to that because there's all the new studies on the LDL and longevity. So
the more LDL you had up to a certain point, and it was around 4.
It was high,
It was like 189 milligrams per deciliter. That's the American figures, but around 4 LDL, which is, the doctor would freak out if they saw that. You live longer.
Yeah.
And high LDL is still bad, but what is high?
Yeah.
And that's what that podcast addressed.
Yeah.
And what is low? Because low, you die quicker.
Yeah.
So you don't want it to be too low, certainly not under 100 or under, 2.5, which is what they recommend us to have. It's certainly wrong.
We need cholesterol to produce hormones for one, so people have very low cholesterol levels. Anyway, very interesting.
It is.
And
it's tricky.
We might get lots of comments, but put your comments down below.
Yep.
If you're watching the YouTube.
Yep.
And tell us what you think. Tell us what's worked for you, what hasn't.
Yep.
We like to hear all the different things and give us your opinions. We like to hear it all. But, we thought we'd just really look at the reasons why these foods are demonised. And these, I think a lot of it comes down to genetics and gut, I think, are two major players.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's other confounding factors as well, but they're two of the big ones. But very interesting.
The good thing about the microbiome is you can change it.
And you can change it really quickly as well.
Yes.
And that's the thing. So
days.
In days, yeah. Literally just by feeding one and, starving another down a little bit, and you can do it. You can manipulate your gut quite quickly. So yeah, so I think that's a huge part of all of this.
And does people know there's more more genes in your gut than there is in your body?
Yeah.
So, I mean, you can change your genome.
Yeah.
I mean, it's remarkable. Now, this is amazing, Nic. And, you know, I hate to quote Hippocrates, one man's food's another man's poison. Again, last time I promised, it's just true.
Yeah.
So, you know, if it works for you, it works for you. So don't go online and argue with someone about what diet doesn't work for them or that.
That's right.
There's always going to be somebody that works for them.
And that's it. And that's what we keep trying to, recently we've been banging on about. It's like everyone's individual. Everyone reacts different to things. Everyone has a different gut microbiome. Yep. Some people can take, you know, can take the red meat no problem, and other people have issues with high TMAO, which causes the inflammation. So you cannot sit here and say, well, people, influencers, cannot sit there and say this is what to do and this is bad and this is good. There's too many variables. There's too many other, you know, genetics involved. Like we said, the microbiome, major player. So yeah, I think that people really need to be careful about what they're putting out there and what they're saying. So yeah.
If they say this works for me and they put it out there, I've got nothing against free speech.
That's fine, yeah, 100%. And you can try it and see if it works for you. But you know, and I have seen in clinics people will persist with an eating way of eating because they believe that had been told that that's the way to do it. Yeah. And they're getting sicker and sicker. So
well, we fell for that in the low-fat thing in the 80s and 90s, and we fell for that hard, and it caused massive spikes in obesity despite eating way less fat. Amazing, Nic. Well, that's about all we've got time for. We better wrap this up. It's a long one today.
I know, I'm hungry.
All right, well, let's go eat some healthy food.
Yes.
I'll see you next week.
See you guys.
Bye.
Yes, Steve. I'm sure that they're very impressed.
There's emails coming in about it already. I can see it.
Okay.
I'll have a drink. You've got no chocolate, so you look good.
Have I got no chocolate?
No, you haven't. Okay.
Okay. No, I've just got chocolate in my mouth.
Yep.
I'll do that again. Sorry, I'm on it today. Oh, that hurt my head. All right. Okay. Oh, yeah, fair call. Anyway, let's get back to it, Steve. Stop holding up the story.
Sorry, I've just got to stop talking.
All right. Yeah. Okay.
Steve could read it out for you.
There you go, Steve.
No, you can't.
All right. I can't. I've done it so many times now. I'm just going to laugh.
Oh, no.
There's some bloopers for you.
Yes.
So it's a meta-analysis, Steve.
Meta-analysis is funny, these meta-analysis, isn't it?
It's a funny thing. All right. Okay. No, I'm all over it now. Look. I'm good. I'm good.
Okay.
I got my straight face on. We're ready to go. Steve is going to make it harder. All right. Okay. You know, genetically, sorry, I'm the professional. That's one. But that's what I go with. Shoot the messenger. Anyway, I'm delirious today. Okay, so, Steve, oh my God, we're going to get in so much trouble.
Is that one?
I'm sorry, I have no control over what Stephen said. Oh my God. You got Stephen.
Oh, I got Stephen.
You got Stephen, you're in trouble on your own.
No, it's interesting.
Yeah, sorry. You're the Dairy Queen King.
What are you saying? Call me Queen.
I'm very hungry. I guess my blood sugars.
If you start crying again.
Oh my God. Oh, I'm still drinking.
That's right, sorry.
Sorry. Now I'm so awkward.